Welcome to The Secret Life of Mothers. My name is Maggie Gordon-Walker and I'm the founder of Mothers Uncovered. Join us as we explore and share the incredible hidden stories of mothers when life has thrown at them challenge. Discover how the skills we learn in Matrescence, which means becoming a mother, can teach us about more than motherhood. They teach us about unconditional love, resilience and acceptance. I'm joined today by Lily Redwood. Lily writes poems that connects us to the mess and the magic of being human. Described as visceral, loving and brave, her work explores the tangled landscape between birth and death. Her debut pamphlet, You Make Me Think of Swifts, is a raw navigation through the landscape of early motherhood. The book features a foreword by Lucy Jones, author of Matrescence. Lucy says, electrifying and radical, an oasis, a healing balm. You Make Me Think of Swifts recently earned a place on the shelves of the National Poetry Library. Lily is currently working on her new collection, exploring the complexity of the mother-daughter bond through an unflinching, intimate account of caring for her mother at the end of life. She performs extensively across the Southwest. She now lives off-grid in South Wales, where she's establishing a regenerative farm with her partner and 2 children. Lily, welcome to The Secret Life of Mothers.
Hi, Maggie. Thanks for having me.
It is great to have you here. Well, I slightly truncated your bio because that is my first question, which is where in the country are you based, which we know now, but is this the same area as you grew up?
No, I grew up in a completely different environment. So I grew up in Southeast London in a place called Brockley. And yeah, that was my life until I was about 18. And then I left and I had never wanted to live in London. So I got out and I did go back for a brief stint in my late 20s, but that was enough for me, another couple of years. And then I left for the sunny lands of Brighton before ending up here in Wales.
Sunny lands of Brighton is where I
Mm.
currently am, and it is indeed sunny.
Oh, that's where I discovered you actually. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and actually, do you know how I discovered you? Was I was having EMDR therapy for
Okay.
PTSD, which I had happened as a result of my first having my first child. So it was some
Yeah.
postnatal trauma that had happened, and your leaflet was there in the waiting room, and I picked it up, and it's been in a folder ever
Ah,
since. So that's where I
bit
saw
of,
it
bit of
about
a
12
schlep
years
from
ago,
South Wales,
8 years
sadly.
ago. Yeah, no, it's too far for me to get to now, but yeah,
Ah, well,
14 years
that's
isn't
nice
that
to know.
far. Yeah.
So there was obviously something about the deep countryside that appealed to you all the time you were growing up, and even when you went back to London or lived in Brighton, you wanted to not be in a city. You wanted to be out in nature. That's a big thing for you.
Yeah, I don't think it was a kind of a conscious decision in that way. It was more this kind of cognitive dissonance that I was experiencing when I lived in London, and I enjoyed the lifestyle, enjoyed going out and having fun and the culture and the diversity of living in a city. Just there's so much available and so many different people. It's a
Mm,
rich place. um but there was something in me that was still yearning for something else and didn't feel completely in alignment. When I met my partner in Brighton, actually, we were both kind of at this juncture point in our lives where we were looking for something else, and we started to imagine different ways of being, living in a different way, and we started to be curious about alternative lifestyles. And he was doing an MA in sustainable design, and yeah, we just went on. We ended up actually going on this huge journey of inquiry around what it means,
mm.
what that sense of belonging, what it means to feel a sense of belonging, what it means to belong. And that took us on all around the UK, and we ended up turning it into a documentary. that we ended up touring. And over this time, we went to lots of different permaculture projects, land-based projects, met people who were doing things differently. And it was at that point, really, during that time, that we realised, right, we need to do something completely different. And I think it wasn't really about sort of like a rural idyll. It's more about the fact that we are in this time of system collapse, and
Mm.
the way to respond to that for us feels like creating resilience within our family unit and within our local community, um, regenerating the landscape rather than taking from it, and sort of stepping away from that myth of progress and exponential growth, and looking back into something, not looking back, but looking into something that feels more integrated and, yeah, like I say, regenerative rather than extractive.
Mm. Wow, that's it's really good to have thought about your ethos. And I would imagine, so my next question, I imagine this feeds into it quite a lot, is what we would need to know about you to understand how you would describe yourself as a mother. So I would imagine the regenerative lifestyle is a big part of that.
Yeah, it was interesting when I read that question. I thought, what does that mean? Like, describe myself as a
Mm.
mother. I was kind of like, it sort of was quite a difficult, that's, I'd say, the hardest question in
Mm.
the list, which is, I kind of, I wouldn't first describe myself as a mother. That's kind
Mm.
of, um, it's like my mothering is part of how I am in the world. Um, and I've always been driven by the things that interest me and the things that I love, and they are obviously my children, and the natural world and people in general.
Mm.
So I would probably describe myself maybe as open-minded and curious and trying, but not always doing a great job at it. I often feel like there's a poem actually that I've written called Shit Mum. I don't know if I can say that on your podcast.
Yes, it's fine.
So quite often I would describe myself as a shit mum, like
Yeah.
that's my inner um, negative voice would be like, oh, are you, I'm not, I forget things. I don't like, sometimes I forget to feed my kids or put a snack in their bag or remember the sunscreen or do all these different things that I
Mm.
think good mums do. So sometimes I feel like I'm a bit out of my depth really with mothering. And then other times when I see how I navigated the challenges of motherhood, I think actually I've done all right,
Yeah.
and I try to cultivate that sense of curiosity and openness in my children. And we're very honest as a family. There's nothing really that we don't talk about. So that's really important. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think an awareness of yourself and your limitations is a hugely important thing as a parent in general. I think anyone who kind of doesn't examine their behavior is probably a shit mum or dad, because you have to sort of own up and say you're not perfect, you're going to make mistakes. And children, I think, really respect that when an adult, particularly an adult who's important to them, acknowledges it.
yeah, and I think, there's a lot of pressure in our society, or in modern Western society to be the perfect everything. So it's
Yeah.
like you're meant to be, you know, uh, there's a line in one of the poems that says, be a good mother and be a good wife, and while you're there, be a CEO too, because you need to work hard because your job is what makes you, and no one here gives a shit if it breaks you. So why don't you go and pay someone to fix you? So it's this kind of culture of like, well, you've got to do it all, and if you can't do
Mm.
it, you failed, and if you're failing, then you need to go and pay someone else to get you out of the situation. So I do think there's a lot of pressure to be a certain way as a mother, and whether it's the kind of natural movement or like uber achiever movement.
Mm,
Everyone's expected to fit into another box. Um,
yeah.
so that identifies them as a mother within that framework. So yeah, I
Yeah.
it's a big question, I think, actually, that question.
Mm, it is, and it changes through your life. The mother you are at the start is
Yeah.
not how you are a few years down the line.
Oh,
And
I
when
imagined myself like home editing and, like doing all like homemade snacks and all that kind of stuff. And, it it's not
yeah,
like that. And I can't,
no.
I haven't got the capacity to do those things
Mm,
now. But I like the idea of it, and I
yeah.
admire anyone who can manage all of that as well.
It can be difficult for the child as well, because if everyone else is pulling out their whatever
Yeah,
snack,
Kit
their Fruit
Kats, and
Loops
you're
or
like,
whatever,
here's your
and here's something I made earlier. They're like, no, it's so
I know it
embarrassing.
just
I
ends
don't
up in
want
the
it.
bin anyway, doesn't it? So it's like we might as well just give them a Kit Kat.
Yeah. Um, so yes, you and your family live off grid in a small cabin. You described it to me. So can you tell us the reasons for your choice and what everyday life is like in the cabin?
Okay, so
It's not the cabin you can see behind you. No, that's not
no,
your cabin.
it's about half the size of this cabin that I'm in. I'm actually at my friend's house, so I'm off grid. So this is a thing, So we talked, didn't we, Maggie? You said make sure you've got good internet for the
Yes.
podcast, because at home we don't have Wi-Fi. We just use our phones as a tether, and it's not always good, the internet there. So there are a lot of reasons why we maybe wouldn't choose to live in a cabin. But the reasons that we have chosen are bigger and more important than the reasons not to, even though sometimes it can be challenging with a family of four in a space that, it's 7 meters by 2.5 meters. We've got the kids are at bunk beds at one end, and we're in a bunk above the sofa at the other end, and the kitchen's in the
Mm,
middle. It's small, and so when
yeah,
you
that's a
know
challenge.
it's a challenge. But before that, we were living in a truck, an old library bus, and that was also very small. So since 2011, we've lived in unusual spaces. So we've lived in a
Mm,
touring caravan and a static caravan and a library bus and a long wheelbase van, and yes, and now we're in this cabin. And the reason, I mean, I touched on it a little bit earlier with the decision to live in a more rural environment.
mm,
So what we're doing here in South Wales is we've applied for a thing called a One Planet development. So the One Planet development is a Welsh planning policy that enables people to build an off-grid dwelling on agricultural land on the condition that they can prove, or we can prove, that we can sustain our family's basic needs from the land. So we have to
mm,
show that we can provide 65% of our food, if not actually, then through money generated from products our food produced on the land. We have to show that we can cover our internet, our communication, our clothing, our transport, and our fuel. So, and everything has to be off grid. So we have to be sufficient in water, heating, and power. So
yeah.
it's an epic undertaking, and if I'm honest, it's the least accessible um, uh, so-called access to land thing I've ever encountered.
Mm,
It's extremely laborious, very, very complex. Our application's nearly 100 pages long. We had to submit
wow.
a 5-year business plan. We had to break down all of our energy consumption down to like how often we're going to charge our head torches. I'm not even exaggerating. How often we're
Mm,
going to use a blender, how many hours that would be over a year, how much power that's going to use, how many journeys we take in a year, where we're going to go. Um, it
It's very controlling, isn't it? It's
it
just kind of
it's
like Big Brother's watching you in advance
yeah,
of all these things you're going to be doing.
yeah, and it's so uh, ironic and classic that,
Mm.
this bureaucratic process is kind of dictating something where we essentially are trying to do something positive, to live a low
Yeah.
impact life, to offer something back to our community. And we're having to go through these stringent rules and regulations that someone who had like £2 million and wanted to just build some, whatever multiplex, could just, potentially do. I mean, not on agricultural land, but
Mm.
it's a little bit maddening if I'm honest. But we believe in
Yeah.
what we're doing so much, so it's really about creating resilience within, like I said, it's about creating resilience. So how do we live a life that um, is in alignment, that works with the natural world rather than against it, that is about connection to other people, to the land, to the more than human world, to ourselves. Um, so yeah, it has been difficult. And my almost teenager just thinks it's excruciating to live in a place
Mm.
with a compost toilet in a tiny cabin, and I just need to say that the cabin is the stepping stone. So we're applying to build an actual house, albeit
Right.
it's not it will be more like this cabin. The house will be more like
Mhm.
this cabin that you can see here. So a kind of 17 meters by 5 meter cabin, or 4 meters maybe it is, but anyway. So it's a stepping stone at the moment. And the reason we've done it this way is because we couldn't afford to buy a house with land. We couldn't afford to rent a place while we're doing the application.
Right.
And so the only solution really was to just be on site, to be available to do all the work that needed to be done, to keep our costs to a minimum. And you know, here we are. We're now a year into the planning, and we're still nearly a year. It'll be a year in September, and it's July now. So we're working towards that point. I couldn't live in the cabin if there wasn't another thing that we're working towards. That would feel
Right.
very
Sure.
oppressive. We know that we're working towards something, and of course, the whole project, um, which is called Bryn Cynefin, is much bigger than us or our
Yeah.
individual kind of, oh, I wish I could, because we can't fly like that, for example.
Mm.
We can't take a international flight anymore. Like it would be too much on our carbon footprint. We have to live within a one planet threshold. So these are the kind of compromises that we're making because we believe in what we're doing and where we're going. So, yeah, some
Mm.
people call it bonkers. My stepdad said to me, he goes, I don't know why you're doing it to yourself. And I'm like, if I
Yeah.
lived in a terraced house in town, I would be losing my mind. So I'd rather be
Yeah.
losing my mind on a hillside. Um,
Yeah. But yes, I would imagine as your children are getting older, that is something that will perhaps be a source of conflict between them and you, this choice and how that impacts on them. Is that
I I don't know. I'm not sure. I think that I mean, my son enjoys it a lot, and his friends think it's heaven when they come. They've got a
yeah.
whole, there's 16 acres. It's a
Wow.
large piece of land. And so I feel like for him, it's, he loves being there. And our daughter, I think, even though sometimes she finds it difficult, she also really loves where we are,
Mm.
and she she understands why we're making the choices we're
Mm.
making. And I think if anything, in the future, they both will come to maybe appreciate why we've made the choices we've made while in the moment. Because I think, sometimes I say to all of your friends, I'm sure at 13 you hate whatever your parents are doing. You could be living in a
Yeah.
massive house and you'd be like, oh, well, Lily lives on the hill and she's got like she can do whatever she wants and I'm stuck in a different thing, or parents who work
Yeah.
until 8, 9 o'clock at night and are never there at dinner time. It's like we all make choices, don't we, about what we think
Mm.
is going to give our children the best go at life, and
Yeah.
that's what we've done, and we have done it from a place of love, and I hope and trust that that will continue carry through in
Mm.
but I'm sure you know there'll be moments when she hates us, but I think most children have moments when they hate their parents.
Yes, I think you'd be hard pushed to find a family where that hadn't happened. So, yes, on the subject of family, you looked after your mother at the end of her life. And so it's a reversal of roles, effectively, as for everybody when their parents age, you become the carer,
Mm,
on some level, and they become more childlike. So,
yeah.
how was this for you, and what memories do you have? When was it for to begin with?
It was in 2023. So my mum, Rosie, she was a very kind of, we always joked that she would be the one to live till 100. Like she was never ill. She'd keep going all the time. She was very kind of young looking and bouncy kind of character, very dynamic and um, yeah, just you did wouldn't have we just all thought she was going to go on forever, didn't
Mm.
present as an elderly woman, whatever that might mean to someone in their perception. But
Yeah.
she got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which is a very, very quick. What
Yeah.
happens is it goes undetected because it doesn't have many symptoms, and once you are symptomatic,
It's too late.
it's very late, and it can be hard to catch it. So, or to stop it, not catch it, but to stop it
Mm.
from progressing. So she got diagnosed in June and she died in August. So it was like very, very fast.
Mm.
And so it was, I had cared for one of my best friends at end of life. She had breast cancer. And so I'd been involved in her end of life care, and I had a few friends who were doulas, death doulas, and
Mhm.
who worked in with death and dying. So I didn't feel too, I felt like, and I'm a doula myself, and actually, I'm sure, and I know many people say these similarities between death and
Mm.
birth, and so for me it was maybe less like caring for a child, my child, and more like caring for at the same way that I've experienced caring for a woman in the birth room, this transitioning into and letting go that has to happen in
Mm.
order to transition to death, to dying, to letting go.
Yeah.
Um, so it was very difficult in terms of the complete shift in role. I had when I was younger, my mum was a single mum with me up until when I was 6, before she met my stepdad, and then that they were together from then. So he became a big part of my life. But um, when she was dying, it felt my sister and I cared for her, and my stepdad was there as well. And she said, I remember when we sat there and we'd spoken to the oncologist, and he'd said, "Yeah, look, this is not really a very good situation."
Mm.
Um, she said, "Oh well, I'll just go to the hospice," and I was like, "Well, you don't have to do that. If you want to be at home, you can be at home. Like, let's do it at home. Like, there's no need for
Mm.
you to go and be anywhere else. Like, I'll look after you." And she said, "Oh, well, I don't want to do that to you. I don't want to make you do that." And I just said, it would be the greatest gift for me to look after
Yeah.
you. And in many ways, that that was a gift. It was a gift to be able to go with her on that journey towards the end of her life, to be part of that, to look after her, to care for her, and I really did feel like it was the greatest honor, really, to do that. Um, and so, yes, there are the things that there's so much kind of stigma, isn't there? Oh, it's undignified, and someone's got to look after
Mm.
you, and and there's no, and I again, there's another poem where I talk about um as um washing her body. So after she died, I washed her body with my sister as well, and got her ready for the undertaker. And when you're washing your newborn, there's no indignity in, or when you're
No.
changing your newborn's nappy, or when you're like feeding your newborn, there's nothing undignified about that baby, and there's nothing
Yeah.
undignified about someone at the end of their life. It's a beautiful thing to just be purely vulnerable, and to be and to be able to look after her, felt extremely precious and very, very um, dignified, and I felt like, for me, I didn't want anyone else to do that. I wanted to do that because it felt like the right thing for me to be able to care for her like she'd cared for me, as a
Yeah.
child, as a baby, or so. Yeah, so I feel like it was difficult for her, that time, letting go. But if I'm honest, she was so poorly, and I do think about this, like when you're really ill, actually, you don't really, you kind of get to a point when you're like, "Oh, just do the thing that needs to be done."
Yeah.
It's, um, there wasn't any other way, really. Um,
Mm.
so it just, there was nothing, it wasn't like a struggle to fight against. Oh,
Mm.
she just had to surrender. We all had to surrender, um, to what was happening. um, and I was lucky to be able to phone friends and be like, what's it going to look like when she's dying? Like, how will I know when, all these questions, or what do I do after
Mm.
she's died, or how do I, just some of the simple care things, like when you've had a baby, like people are like, oh, remember to like um, clean in their neck, because when they're feeding, they'll get stuff like stuck in their neck, and you don't know that when you're a mum until you're like, oh yeah, no, you need to clean around their neck, and
Oh, yeah.
and then
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
I remember being like, I didn't know how to clean my mum's mouth because she couldn't really brush her teeth, and then someone said, oh, you need to use a swab, and I was like, oh right, there's a swab. And so it's just these things that we can share by sharing our experiences of, like, a little kit list. And I've actually sent this on to friends who've now since cared for their parents. I've said, right, these are the things you need to get, like have something to, there's a list. I've literally written a list of the things that are useful to have, when you're at home and you're looking after someone who's at that stage in their life. The same way
Mm.
that I created a list after my daughter was born and gave that to all my friends
Yes.
who were having babies. Um,
It is. It's a huge thing, and I think there is a slight movement. I know someone in Brighton who, runs death cafes, because there's a lot we don't discuss, because we
yeah,
don't want to think that's coming. The whole very thorny issue around assisted dying, which is not something we're getting into now, but that we push it away. We think that's not happening. No, not
yeah,
happening. So we
yeah,
cloak it all in mystery. And that, my mother died at the beginning of the year, and it's just there's so much stuff, around the undertaker, and all the weird little rituals and the things that you're asked to do. It's just like, oh, I'm not prepared for this. I mean, in her
no.
case, she was nearly 90, so it was kind of, and been ill a long, long time. But it is something we try and shy away from, and we shouldn't. We should just embrace death is just part of life. Everything is going to go
Absolutely.
eventually.
Yeah, and I
But
just think the more we talk about it, the less frightening it is, and I
mm,
think that's why it was difficult, because we hadn't talked about my mum dying because we thought she was going to live forever. So when it came, it was like,
Mm,
what's going on? We're like, couldn't quite get their head around it, but that doesn't make any sense,
yeah,
Um, so yeah, it is a thing that is taboo still, and
yeah.
it's not every, that's only hit, in a lot of cultures it isn't at all. Even in Ireland there's a totally different approach to
Mm,
death and dying. I don't know about Scotland or actually the Welsh culture around it, but it's crazy, but again, it's the same as birth. Like, people don't talk about it. You're just expected to know what to do, and then
mm,
also to hand it over to an institution or outsource it. Like,
yeah,
and actually you don't have to do that. People are like, oh, what, you can wash the body, and oh, what, you can, I wove my mum's coffin, and people don't know that you can do those things. And I think it's the same
mm,
when you have your baby. People are like, oh, what, you can choose where you have your baby, and you can choose who's there, and you can choose how you do
yeah,
it. And it's like, yeah, there are actually a lot of more choices than we're made to think there are, or that obvious that are available, that are obviously available. Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that story. I know it was difficult for you remembering it, but it's really
Yeah.
powerful to listen to. Um, so let's move on to your writing. And
Mm.
you're going to, yeah, I mentioned I really like the Swift poem. So I don't know if you've got that to hand or know it
Oh
off
yeah.
by heart, but it'd be nice to hear that, because that I think is very pertinent to the secret life of mothers. What this is the sort of hidden
Mm.
stuff that we're talking about. So just generally, though, before you do that, what factors and themes inspire your writing on the whole?
Well, I generally like to go in for the kind of gritty stuff, the raw stuff. I draw a lot of inspiration from the natural world, but also from daily life. So, I might in one poem be talking about uh, fish fingers, and in another poem be talking about you know, something more poetic. But fish fingers. Life is constant poetry. Like, there's poetry in everything, and it's about for me, it's about observing and distilling moments and drawing the detail out of those moments to communicate an experience
Mm.
or an idea. So yeah, I've got kind of some of my stuff's more spoken word for performance, so it's not so much written for the page. That stuff tends to be more kind of political and rhythmic and dynamic, and then some of the stuff more for the page is slightly more drawn out and playing with form and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but essentially birth, death, and all the bits in between,
In between,
all the messy
lovely.
bits in between.
So would you read or share with us your Swift's poem?
Oh, yeah. So you learn to sleep and fly with one eye open and sometimes both eyes completely shut for just a few seconds. And sometimes you fall. The scientists say it's a miracle that you can survive on so little sleep. But when you're navigating two hemispheres and there's no escape because the destination is set and you're already in the air and there's no going back because what's behind you seems too very far away and something inside you says keep going, and you know that your clenched feet won't touch the ground now for at least another 7 months, and if you push for anything more than just a few seconds rest, then who would catch you? Who would catch you? So you make the most of what you can get. And besides, you found that this one eye open, one eye closed thing is really quite an efficient use of time, and that you can get more done just as long as you don't stop. Because if you did, you'd feel quite lost. Quite lost. The scientists say it's a mystery that you are able to function, but still you fly. You fly. So high that you are almost invisible to the eye. but I can see you. And it's amazing, it's truly incredible how many miles you cover sleeping on the wing.
Oh, that's lovely. I'm always struck by swifts. You know, they just swoop here and there, willy nilly.
Well, they do this thing called unihemispheric slow wave sleeping. So they close one eye and sleep with one side of their brain, and then and then they're active with the other side of the brain. They keep flying, and that 7 months, their feet not touching the ground. That's literally they when they're in flight, when they're migrating, their feet won't touch the ground, and they mate in the air and they feed in the air. And I actually wrote it for a friend who at the time was uh, she'd been going through a separation, and I really could just see how much she was doing. Um,
Mm,
and actually, when I started to care for my mum, I realized that it again, it was that same thing of like you're just in this care role, there's no stopping, you can't take a break, you're just in it. And um, so it's evolved now. When I read it, I always dedicate it for anyone who does the work of caring for others, because it's such a huge part of our society relies on care work, and
yeah.
it's so undervalued. It is just actually quite, in my opinion, quite disgusting how undervalued care work is and how unseen it is. And all of us had someone looking after us for the first, of course, some people have had very, very difficult childhoods and weren't lucky enough for that. But even then, there would have been someone somewhere that had to do the
Yeah.
basics. And then when we reach the end of our lives again, we need people to care for us, or for any reasons, people who've been born with additional needs, who need extra help. It's like, and no one talks about the people who are doing that on top of their work, on top of,
Mm,
doing all the other things in their life. So
yeah.
I just thought the Swifts are such a, and then I love this as well. I think it's called, they do this kind of screaming, don't they? Their sound. And then there's another side of me was like, oh, wow, they're like these kind of cackling, kind of witches, like, they're doing their care work, and they're kind of like moving together in this kind of murmuration and movement. And yeah, I mean, they don't murmurate in the same way, obviously, as but you know what I mean. It's like this
Yeah.
magical thing that they do as well. And so that's
Mm,
sort of celebratory side as well, just
yeah.
recognizing it. Yeah.
So, how, Lily, when you became a mum, in what ways do you think it changed you and led to the work you do now? So, as well as being a doula, you tell me you run nature groups and women's circles.
Yeah, I mean, I was involved with the Red Tent before I became pregnant with my daughter, and women's circles have been a huge part of my life. And through my pregnancy, both my pregnancies, and actually, all of my big life stuff, it's been held in a circle somewhere
Mm,
along the way. And I absolutely treasure those relationships, that many of which grew in Brighton, actually, with the Red Tent in Brighton. And now I've been in a women's circle that we've it's been going for nearly 7 years now. And so how did motherhood change me? I'm not sure. Maybe in terms of that sense of surrender. I think that has to come with parenthood. There is a sense of surrender. And also I feel like my creativity was ignited again through motherhood. Like, I really do feel like since I've become a mother, it's been the most creative decade really of my life. So yeah, I feel like opened lots of different experience, or continues to open lots of different experiences and questions, and in a lot of ways really forced me to, because when we first started making that film, I got pregnant. We didn't, and so this film that was all about like finding a different way of being suddenly became about the future generations and what was the world that I want to create for this child that we're having and for all future life, you know. So it kind of took on this new level of pertinence, I guess, with parenthood. Like suddenly the decisions I make are not just about me. And of course we can say, oh well, they're all our children, and you know we have to care about the world and what's coming. But I, you know, I'd be lying if I didn't say that when I had my own children and when my friends had children, I was like, oh shit, yeah, we really need to think about this, because these people, these small people, are going to be coming in to the world that we're creating now. So I think questioning what I really believe in, what's important to me, it's forced me to do that in many ways, and to make decisions based around that. It's you know, responsibility. There's no escaping the responsibility. And I probably, if I'm honest, was someone who really, you know, in my younger years really wasn't really down with being that responsible. I quite like being wild and free, and
Yeah, you strike me as someone
so
who liked being wild and free.
yeah, yeah. So sometimes it's really hard because I have to be a real
Yeah,
grown up, and
yeah.
it's not
It's
always
funny because your
fun.
children look up at you with their big eyes and they just think, you know, you've got it all sorted.
Right.
And when
No,
you know, I remember that I became a mum. I thought, wow, my mum had it so sorted. And but you know, everyone
we're all
is
winging
just
it. Yeah.
we're
We're
all
all
winging it,
winging it. Yeah.
all kind of thinking that shit, I did that wrong. This is
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
What am I doing? When's that? Yeah, because I remember this so clearly when I'd given birth and I was, you know, just about to leave the labour ward, and the midwife said, "Let's get mum up to the ward." And I was thinking, "Where's my mum got? When did my mum? Oh, me, I'm the mum.
Yeah,
I'm not
you're the
mum."
mum.
About
You're the mum.
this, what?
I
Where's my
do.
mum
I
coming?
have to say, I don't like it when people call me mum, like when
No,
the teachers call me mum or the midwife calls
no.
me mum. I'm like, please.
Yeah, that's one of the things we do in Mothers Uncovered is I get them to, you know, I want them to answer whether or not their child has the same surname as them, because I think there's a whole lot of stuff around loss of identity
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
lot of women. Not
Yeah.
all. I mean, some choose to, you know, have the mother's name or it's a joint name or, you know, whatever, but it's something that by default a child will take the father's name. And it's, yeah, it's interesting, I think.
Yeah, I mean, when we got married, we actually changed our name by deed poll. So we had a new name, which, you
Mm,
know, obviously made both our families, not my family so much because the woman's expected to take a new name anyway, but I know that was
yeah.
difficult for my
Yeah, I'm
partner's
sure.
family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, your daughter was born in 2013.
Yes.
So if you were to write a letter or, you know, a poem to yourself the day before she came into the world, what would it say, do you think?
Um, oh gosh. I think it would be around I think actually the thing that I'm really still haven't managed to learn yet, which I think is the absolute key uh, to parenting in a good way, is learn to regulate your nervous system.
Mm,
So, like, I find, especially being in that perimenopause phase and then also having my own neurodivergence, like, it's very hard for me when my family, when my children, like, are losing their shit, not to, like, join them. And, you know, when she was younger, it was much easier with, like, a, you know, like a toddler tantrum I could kind of handle. But
yeah.
actually, as she's got older, and even with my son, actually, I find it much harder to parent an older child. I thought it'd be the other way
Mm,
around. I thought the little ones
mm,
would be hard, and then older would be easier. But actually, I found
yeah.
it harder. And I don't know if that's because it's coincided with my perimenopause kind of ramping up,
Quite likely.
or because it is harder. But um, I feel like that's an absolute key that I still want, I'm still working on, is like, how do I emotionally detach in an emotionally engaged way? So how can I
Mm,
be there with her and with him in his suffering, but not suffer myself, and just to hold it. Um,
mm,
and yeah, I don't really, I'm still learning how to do that really. But
mm,
I think if I could do that, I would find a lot of the things that I find difficult much easier.
yeah.
Um, because I find that quite often I get pulled into the emotional story.
Mm,
If something hard,
mm,
difficult happens to them, I'm like, oh my God, that's terrible. I want to stop it because I'm feeling it too. And rather than just being like, oh yeah, that's hard for you, and then kind of help her out of it, I just go, right, I'm like,
mm,
right, I'm jumping in, let's go. We're both flailing around, trying to get our heads above water.
yeah.
So I think just that sort of, put on your own life vest first, or throw in the ring
Yeah.
rather than jumping in, that kind of thing.
Yes,
Good for
that's a
me.
great analogy. Put your life vest on.
Yeah.
Just as you were saying that, I was thinking there's something I suppose about parenting older children. You feel more exposed because obviously they're closer to you in terms of adult and seeing what's behind what you're saying. Whereas a little child will not be observing that, so you can get away with more.
Yeah.
But I expect in your work, I don't know if you've come across the expression fetal microchimerism,
Oh,
whereby
yes.
the cells,
Cells.
your
Yes.
brain is permanently
Yes.
changed.
Yes. Yeah.
And as you say, you're neurodivergent. So goodness knows, I mean, there's probably not been studies done on how that impacts you. But there is this thing. So my eldest went off to Thailand for a few weeks at the start there. Great, had a great time. But while there's that like, he's far away. It doesn't matter that he's 21 and he's his own man. He's my
Yeah.
baby still. And it did,
Yeah.
I was very on edge until he was safely back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's we're biologically programmed, just like the swifts do all their staying in the air. A mother is
Yeah.
programmed to think, where is my child? No matter, she could be 60 and
Right.
he could be 30.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any difference.
Yeah. Yeah. You do. And I remember watching a series about parenting, and it was saying that the primary carer, the and so it was looking at not only mothers but same-sex couples. Whoever's the
Mm,
primary carer has and at the amygdala is activated in a way that it isn't in the secondary carer.
right.
So that's why, like, there's always one parent who's like, like constantly in that high alert. And actually, when they
Yeah.
looked at couples who did a 50-50, they both had it. Both of the amygdalas were
Right.
like, bing, 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 bing. And so
Okay.
it's like, there's definitely, yeah, I feel like I did, you know, Pete says to me sometimes, like, God, you never used to be this on edge. And I'm like, oh, I know. I just feel like it switched the alert button switched on. And
Mm,
again, it's the nervous system. It's like,
yeah.
um, yeah, it is. It is really hard to,
Yeah.
you are set, there is an entanglement, isn't there? Whether you
Definitely.
like it or
Definitely
not.
that. And it's, I've political with a small p. I think it's really important that people should know that that is a thing, and it's not because women get a bad rap for that. It's like, oh, look at you smothering your child. Oh, look at them,
Mm,
mummy's boy. Not
mm,
letting them be free. It's not. It's not that
mm,
at all. It's
mm.
nature has designed us
Yeah,
to do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah. It's irresistible.
it is. So,
Yeah.
Lily, last question. If like Des Island discs, I like to think of matrescence, which, as we know, obviously means becoming a mother. Um, and I like my guests to think of a matrescence disc that they would have. So it could be either you as a mother, or just your general perception of motherhood, or perhaps your relationship with your mother. Maybe a song that came when you were caring for her. What would your matrescence disc be?
But I actually, I have a lot of songs that I listen to when I'm finding being a mother difficult, and like lots of them are quite kind of like uh, loud and empowering, kind of like, full, like, or big dance tracks that I can just play and go
Yeah,
for. But there are quite a few really amazing musicians now releasing music around this matrescence theme, and One of them is a woman called Claire Tonti. She's got an album called Matrescence, and that is a beautiful. I think one of the things that it captures, which is so, for me, is an essential part of motherhood, is the kind of the ambivalence and the paradox that comes with motherhood. Like there's like the absolute beauty of it, and then the drudgery of it, and the joy, and then the absolute pain, of all the different sides of it. And in that album, she kind of somehow manages to capture all those different aspects of the self and that transformation, and what it is to, and loss. So I'd say either some kind of banging dance tracks, like really kind of sassy stuff, like Peaches or someone, or
or a track off that album.
But Claire Tonti's Matrescence album, which is really
different moods. Some days you want to have a stamp and a shout,
sometimes you want to bawl your eyes out, and sometimes you want to just dance like a maniac.
Yeah, both are important.
Yeah, exactly.
So Lily, tell us your Instagram handle so people can come and find you and learn more about your work.
Yeah, so I'm Lily Redwood Poet on Instagram, so you can come and find me there. I've got a website, lilyredwood.co.uk, and then our land-based project is Bryn Cynefin, so that's Bryn, Bryn, which is hill, and then Cynefin, which is a Welsh word that relates to belonging and habitat, your sense of home, and that is Cynefin. Cynefin, bryncynefin.co.uk.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for talking to me, Lily, and all the different topics we've thought about. It's been a really lovely discussion.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been really great to speak with you. I've enjoyed it, and I love that circle from all those years ago in that post period that was so difficult, and then here talking to you, it feels really wonderful to complete that loop. So thank you for inviting me.